So thank you, everybody. Pleasure to do this for and with you today. So please help yourself to a postcard. You are needed, and now is your time. And if you want to see what I'm doing, my website is on the back of that postcard. It's leeharrisenergy.com. Big love. Take care.
Hello. Hi. I know we've got people still filtering back in. So I am Wendy Kennedy. I am a channel, an intuitive, and an empath. And for more than 20 years, and it's hard to believe, as we turn the calendar, it will be 25 years, I have been working with beings in other realms and dimensions, helping people to shift their perspective of reality so that they can live happier, healthier, and more joy-filled lives. And if you'd asked me 25 years ago what I'd be doing with my life, this was not it. And it has been such a joy, and it really is a pleasure to be here. And it's wonderful to see so many people who have kind of blossomed and opened their minds, because things have really changed in 25 years. When I first began, I started working with my own angelic guides. I was doing automatic writing. And then other beings from different star systems started showing up. And then the Pleiadian collective came. And they were waiting for me to start to channel verbally, because when I was doing the automatic writing, I was hearing things well in advance of what I was writing. And they said, it's time to put down the pen and it's time to start speaking. And so the Pleadians showed up. They are the primary guides that I work with the public and in private sessions. But I actually work with a lot of galactic beings, from Arcturus, Lyra, Sirius, Orion, Cassiopeia, Andromeda. And we're going to hear from some of them today, I think. With the Pleiadian collective, there are about 2,600 beings in the group. And they are from the Pleiades system. If you're not familiar with the Pleiades, I think probably pretty much everyone is, but just in case you're a drag-along and you don't know, it is an open cluster, and they tell me of about 750 stars. I think if you look online, you'll see things like 500, but they tell me there are about 750 stars in the system. And they are not physical beings, they're ninth dimensional. And so rather than incarnate to a planetary body, they actually align with a stellar body. And in their case, they align with Alcyone, which is the central sun in the Pleiades. So if you go outside at night, the winter, here we can see them very clearly. If it's a cold night and the sky is clear, if you look up and find Orion's belt, you look about 5–10 degrees off, you'll see kind of this hazy cluster. If it's really dark where you live, you might be lucky enough to see about 14 stars. And it's very difficult to see if you're looking directly at it. So you can kind of see, oh, that looks like that, but if you look directly at it, it goes away. But that's the Pleiades. Now, the Pleiadian collective work with tone and sound, which was part of the reason why they were waiting for me to start to channel verbally. And everyone always asks where I'm from. I grew up in Kansas. And when the Pleiadians come in, they actually work with tone and sound. And they modulate the tones. And really, it's not any one particular dialect. It's just tones and sounds that resonate at a cellular level. So if you've got a very keen ear, you'll notice at the very beginning, they actually do an attunement. It doesn't last long, but they actually work with harmonics and overtones. So, you know, when I first began, like within the first year, the Arcturians came through and they started giving me some symbols. And they told me this was the language of light. And so I played with them for a while, and then I kind of put it aside as the Pleiadian collective came in. And a few years ago, they came to me and they said, it's time to start working with that again. So in addition to just doing the straight channeling, I'm also working more and more with working with the language of light. So I know we're going to be doing an activation. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I know the guides are going to take a moment to kind of explain what exactly the language of light is and how it is impacting you as they speak it. So I know there is a lot of ground we're going to cover. When I first began working with the Ps, as I affectionately call them, they used to be referred to as Mrs. P, because it was a lot for people to think about taking in 2,500 beings at once. And so they said, let's just call us Mrs. P, make it easy. My Hawaiian friends call them Auntie P. And then they said, okay, it's time. People can get it. Now we're just the Ps. So they started bringing in really big picture information because it was important for us to open our minds. And we needed to open to the galactic awareness. And really within the last 5 years, they brought that back to focusing more and more on the inside. So it's very interesting today that we're going to be talking about the Big Bang, which doesn't get any bigger than that, getting you up and out. But also, I know that they're going to take some time to give you a couple tools and things to help you in a very practical way. And I think that's the thing I love most about the pieces, they're very practical. And things that we can use to kind of help navigate, as Lee was talking about, just kind of bridging that gap. We've got the theory, but how do we apply it? So again, I'm excited to see what we co-create together because this really is a co-creation. They've asked me just to get out of the way. I don't need to know too much before we start. Sometimes I like to have an idea of where they're going, and they said just get out of the way. So we'll see where we go. So just take a nice deep breath as I bring them in. Relax. And as we work today, we ask for assistance from the beings of the highest frequencies of light and love, all others we bind from us. And we'll see where we go. Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect with you. So we're very excited today to have the opportunity to take your questions, to share our perspectives, and we always like to acknowledge those who've shown up in the room, not just you, but the tribe of beings that you brought along. It's a very full house, as we always say, because each of you has got dozens of guides who are showing up. They're very curious about what's going on with this collection and this concentration of light that's going on in Burbank. And so we want to acknowledge their presence because too often on this planet, you feel that you don't have a lot of support. You feel that you are just struggling down here. You're looking up to the sky and saying to your guides, where is my support? I need your help. You're not showing up. You're not helping me. Well, we always are here. We're always sharing information. The question is, are you getting quiet enough to hear the answer? Many times, no. And we understand that this is not an easy process because you are being asked to, in the midst of chaos, calm yourself and tame the wild beast that is your mind. The habits that you have created since birth and even pre-birth, the ones that you have taken on from your genetic line, that you're being asked to let go of many of those limiting beliefs and to just be in your stillness. We're going to talk a little bit later about integration of the feminine energy because really, if you are not integrating it as you move into 2018, it is going to be a very challenging year for you. All right, so we're going to talk about that in a moment and really how to utilize that energy in a very practical way. But first we want to talk about the Big Bang because that is why you are here. And this is not something that any of you have really heard us talk about because, to be honest, any answer that we give you is really not going to be the full answer because it is very difficult from your level of awareness, from the frequency that you're existing within to really take in the totality of it. So we're going to give you kind of a modified answer. And we're going to explain part of why, because as you understand the construct of the universal game, then there's a part of you that kind of calms down a bit. Because as we start down this line of answering, the ego mind gets very busy. Because for most of you, you are looking for a singular point. You're looking for a now moment where there is a beginning and an end. And reality doesn't exist that way. That is just a construct of the dimension in which you are perceiving reality. It is not how reality truly exists multidimensionally. And this is really important because when you kind of cue into this, it's very liberating for you. You will start to see new options, new things for you as far as perspectives, new ways of existing, But it's only when you open yourself up to the totality of it. So first we're going to talk to you and give you an answer in a way that the mind isn't overly triggered. So what you consider to be the Big Bang is the beginning of your universe. But it goes far, far further back than that. And there really is no beginning because time doesn't really exist. It is a construct of this dimension. It is a marker for experience and nothing else. You can think about it like the Dewey Decimal System in your libraries. It is a place for you to locate a record or a book. And that is how time is experienced by the rest of us. Once you step out of 3D, we perceive it as a marker for experience. It tells us a location, it tells us a now moment, it tells us coordinates, basically. And the question of the Big Bang, you're thinking that there is an instant and a moment when things expanded. What in truth is part of your dimensional structure is that you're living in a dualistic universe. There are other universes that have more polarity to them, which is a bit of a mind bender when you think about a tripolar universe or a septolar universe, that there are more polarities. And for you, everything has its opposite. So light, dark, positive, negative. And as you're thinking about the Big Bang and this expansion, as it is expanding ever outward, it is also expanding ever inward. And so as humans, you're looking to the outside to find that expansion that is outside in the external world. And you're also learning to expand inside. This is what part of the journey is for you, that you are observing the inner mechanisms. You are observing what is transpiring internally. You can go infinitely in. So if you are trying to look outside at the universe to get records, to get information, many of you, when you visualize it, you'll see yourself leaving your bodies, going someplace else outside of you. But also know the moment that this universe was constructed, there was also an energy that went in infinitely. So don't forget that you can actually go inside as well. Now, there is a wave of energy through all things to hit this peak and this valley, this positive, this negative. Your scientists look at it from a standpoint of seeing the expansion, but you are not perceiving the greater fluctuation of the universe. And it's like a heartbeat where there is an expansion and a contraction, an expansion and a contraction. It's not that there is a total collapse, but it is the pulse and the rhythm of your universe that you label the Big Bang. Now, universes are created through a focus of consciousness. When there are beings, collective of beings in the higher dimensional range, typically 12th dimensional energies, will focus their thoughts, their desires, their wishes, their frequency, their energy. They will harmonize to create a construct in which you get the opportunity to play. You all get to decide what rules beforehand are going to be part of this universal game. Because in truth, yes, it is a game. And as Lee was saying before, it is a game. But the ego mind doesn't like that because you want to be all serious about it. But the soul's having fun. The soul is going to the amusement park, throwing its hands up in the air and waving as the ride goes on. And so we want to encourage you to start approaching life from this vantage point, that it is an adventure, it's an exploration. Because when you explore the now moment, you have a lot more fun being here. You have a lot more openness to receive ideas, hits, inspirations about what you can do and what's possible, not what's not possible, which is where the ego likes to take you. So these beings, or collectives of beings, will focus their energy, their knowingness, their desires, their frequency. They will lend part of their own, if you will, energy to create this playground. And then there are beings who say, I want to go play. And this is what you've done. You've said, let's go play in this adventure. So there are beings who will still hold a resonance, a consciousness. And the same thing is happening with your planetary bodies. It is a collective of energy. There are beings who, just as we are a collective, are choosing to hold the space to be your sun. There are beings who are holding the space to be Earth. It is not a singular being. And what you will find once you raise your awareness to the fifth dimensional level is that all of us are a collective. And then you partition off your sense of who you are or what parameters you want to perceive the reality under in order to play in the game. And then you also at any given moment can shift that focus back out to the larger whole. So you can perceive yourself as an individuated consciousness, or you can perceive yourself as collective consciousness. It's up to you in any given moment. As humans, you're struggling to see that collective perspective, and that's part of this quote-unquote ascension process. You're elevating out of this game, and that is what the game was about. It was a game of descension and reascension. How far can we go into forgetting who we are? And then how do we come out of it? The journey is not about getting to the other side, because there is an aspect of you that already knows what it is like to be a multidimensional being. What you came here to learn is how do you do it? What is the journey like? And if you can also remember that, that will make this journey much more palatable, because for many of you, you say, I want the hell out of here. It's not very nice. These people are crazy. And when you can ground and know that you're here to be the light, to be the living example, that you can be happy no matter what's going on around you. You can be peaceful. You can be joy-filled. You're not damned to be here because everybody else is miserable. You can be joyous in the moment. It gets to be a far more pleasurable place for you all to be. So there are consciousnesses that will hold the resonance for these planets. There are consciousnesses, collectives that will hold it for all of the many, many, many galaxies in your universe. Now, what is consciousness? It is a concentration of source energy. Everything is source energy, but when it starts to come together and there is a concentration, then consciousness binds together, as it were, and when there's enough of it that has come together, that is what you call a soul. And then you will have many, many experiences. Now, your soul itself has an oversoul, if you will, which is a larger collection of this energy, a collective as well, if you want to think of it that way. And then there is what you perceive to be your higher self, which is a concentration or a piece of the concentrated energy of your oversoul. And so you are able to, at any given moment, shift into that greater awareness. Now, many of you say, well, I'm trying to connect with my higher self. Your higher self is inside you. It is a part of you, as is source energy. So this is not something that you have to become. You already are all that ever was and ever will be. What you are doing is this beautiful light radiates within you. You're covering it up with limiting thoughts and beliefs. So it's like a dirty window. And the light is trying to pass through. So when it passes through, it's dimmed if you're looking at it at the outside. And of course, you as beings in 3D are looking at the external reflection to tell you who you are. And you're saying, well, it's not very bright. It certainly has all these issues and flaws. That's because of the limiting beliefs. It only allows you to see so much of that brilliant light that is already inside of you. So there's nothing that you have to do. This is about you realigning to your state of being. And as you start accessing more of your state of being, you can start accessing more of the information about the nature of reality. To tell you that there is a singular moment in which the universe was created is a bit of a, how can we put this nicely? Lie. Because you are trying to perceive it from a linear perceived reality. Think of the nature of time as a giant sphere. And on this sphere are infinite dots, and each dot represents a now moment. You move from dot to dot to dot to dot, and in your mind you string them together, and that is your perceived reality. So the Big Bang, as it were, happens in every moment. It is of your choosing to select one of these to perceive that you experience the quote-unquote Big Bang. So if you want to know what that moment of creation is like, it exists within you in this moment. You simply have to tune into it. So we invite all of you right now to take a nice deep breath and imagine what would it feel like right now if I could experience the Big Bang. Whatever that means to you, just imagine what that feeling state would be like. You might see an image. You might just have a sense of expansion. You might have a particular emotion come up. Have you ever asked yourself this question before? Probably not for most of you. Just take note of it. You can access that moment now. So it's not really in your past. It's not really in your future. It is in every moment. So, while we've got you tuned into yourself and paying attention to how you're feeling, we also want to talk about the importance of this feeling state, of taking a moment just to check in. As we said, if you're not really paying attention to how you're feeling, it's going to be a really rough year for you, because otherwise you are just going on autopilot with the ego programs. If you take a moment to be still and acknowledge where you are, then you can make course corrections if your vibration is not quite where you would like to experience it. And if it is where you want to be, then you can expand upon it. But if you're not taking the time to check in, it's very, very, very difficult. So you all need to be doing this more often throughout your day and making those course corrections. And eventually what happens is that you will start to do it moment to moment to moment, and that's divine living. That is when you are in the flow and you are allowing energy to simply move through you. Now, many of you will have this idea of what feminine energy means, and because it is so ingrained in the collective, it hasn't been given a lot of value. The way that feminine energy is perceived right now, it has been suppressed for thousands of years on your planet. And you all give value to the things that you do, but you are not valuing your stillness. If you're not creating something in the external world, then what's the point? This is where many of you are in your ego mind. In the process of manifestation, in a linear perceived reality, the feminine always comes first, without exception. In the multidimensional reality, both are experienced and created at the same time. But where you are, you've got to start with the feminine. What does that mean? It means getting quiet. It means opening up to a space within yourself to allow energy in. And then what happens is you choose a frequency. You say, oh, well, I like this one. I want more of this. And then you are able to then align with it, imagine it, and you start to pulse it out. So you move into the masculine. And then you've pulsed it out. You go back into an observant state. You move back to the feminine to say, all right, what's in front of me? What's here? And you say, oh, that one, I recognize it. It doesn't look at all like I thought it was going to, but I recognize the frequency of it. And then you step out to engage with it. You move back to the masculine. So there is an ebb and a flow, an oscillation between the feminine and the masculine, as we were talking about the Big Bang. Because you are experiencing this dualistic reality, there is this contraction and there is an expansion that just continues. And that happens within you in your process of manifestation. You've got to work with that feminine energy. You are going to find yourself very, very drained if you don't. You will find yourself spinning like a top when everybody else's stuff is coming up because you're not taking the time to center and anchor. Grounding is tremendously important this year. So we want to make sure that you are taking the time to do that. And some of you may say, well, what is that? What does that really mean? You talk a lot about it, but what does it mean? It means imagining connecting with the earth. She has a pulse. She keeps her own heartbeat at a specific hertz to allow you to tune into the universal energies. And if you are especially working with your electronic devices and you are not taking time to ground, then you are going to be out of sync because your electronic devices are not synced with Mother Earth's frequency. If you're grounded, they're not so disruptive. But if you are not grounded which we see many of you when you get upset. For those of you who are sensitive, it's very easy not to want to be here, and out of your body you go. You close that root chakra because you don't want to feel all that, so the chakra closes. And when that happens, you cut off the energy from Mother Earth, and then you start to sync with the electronic devices, the waveforms that are all around your planet, and that makes you feel anxious, it makes you feel fatigued, it makes you feel foggy. And if that's the case, get outside if you can, barefoot if you can. We know certain times of year it's very difficult, and if you can't do those things, then imagine connecting with Mother Earth. This is the one thing that you must do this year. And it sounds so simple, and you will say, well, how come this is so important? It's kind of a no-brainer, but this is the foundation upon which you will stand. And if you've got a shaky foundation, you can't build very high. So you've got to do this. If you want to go through the ascension process, really there are only two things that you've got to do: ground and be present. If you're doing that, everything else will take care of itself. Because when you are present in the moment, you are open to source energy, and you have the ideas, hits, and inspirations about what it is you need to do. In the process of manifestation, as we said, you start with the feminine. Start working with frequency rather than form. Because where you are moving into, you will find that your archetypal programs or your archetypal models, they don't work for you anymore, and you're building new ones. So if you're looking around for something that looks like the next best thing, you're not going to find it, because you've got to build it from inside. So you might feel frustrated if you're looking for that thing you're supposed to do outside of yourself. How do you want to feel? That's what you've got to ask yourself. How do I want to feel? I want to feel happy. I want to feel free. I want to feel energized. I want to feel connected. And then imagine what those sensations are. You can say, I am free, or you can say, I wonder what it would be like to be free. Because for many of you, when you say, I'm free, the ego mind goes, no, we're not. We're a slave to our 9-to-5 job, to all of my obligations. She's kidding herself. And so if you say, I wonder what if, you're able to bypass the ego mind and just bask in the frequency. Both things will align you to the frequency that you want, and then stay open to observe what is coming back around, what is in the moment before you. Because you will forge paths in ways that you could not have even begun to imagine a year ago. You will find connections and ways of putting ideas and information together that never occurred to you before the moment. You couldn't have seen it coming, because the universe has a bigger picture. It has a bigger fabric, a tapestry of experience kind of planned and mapped out. And then how you as a soul choose to explore it is up to you. There are highlights and things that you wanted to experience in this lifetime, and you'll check those things off. I wanted to feel balanced. Got that. There are 20 ways that I've been able to do that in my life. But if you're looking for your purpose and you say, what am I supposed to be doing? It's not about the doing. It's about the state of being that you hold in everything that you do. We're going to say that again because that is so important. Hear us now. It is not about what you do. It is the state of being that you hold that is infused into everything that you do. And that is what is so important right now. So work with your state of being. The way that you do that is to get quiet and work with the feminine first. All right? So we think we'll go ahead and start taking questions. We may come back round to some of the more galactic Big Bang information, but we're happy to go ahead and open the floor. So where would you all like to go?
Hi, thank you. I have a question about being in interactions with other people where I'll have a knowing, or sometimes it comes from inside, sometimes it's something that comes from outside, about that person, and feeling some confusion about when I have the right to share that, even though a question may not have been asked.
So first thing we would say is to check in with yourself about how that energy plays out with you. Because for most of you, when you all start to recognize energy in others, it is playing out in yourself, which is why you're recognizing it. There's no right or wrong here, because this is about you trusting yourself in the moment, for you to say, is this appropriate in the moment to share? Because here's the thing, if you express it and that person is not open, what will happen is it will go in one ear and out the other. If it was information that they really needed to hear, but they just aren't ready to hear it, they will hear it, acknowledge it, and say, that's nice, thank you, and then let it go. And then they'll hear it again someplace else, and they'll say, now this is the second time I've heard this, that's interesting, and they may not be ready for it then. And then there may be a third time, and they'll say, all right, now I've heard it 3 times, I really need to start paying attention. So it may be that you're planting a seed. So pay attention first to yourself. Is it your ego's need to be right, to share information? Because many of you do that. Notice how it feels within you. Does it feel flat? If it feels flat, that usually means that this is not your issue. All right? When you feel highly charged, it means that you've got the same program running. And it can be the flip side. So maybe they are suppressing energy, maybe you're overexpressing it. So there are 2 sides to that dualistic coin. So, it's either the overexpression or the suppression of energy. So just check in with yourself. The ego doesn't like that because the ego wants a hard and fast answer to say, yes, I do, no, I don't. Trust your instincts, there's no right. And, again, if it's not the right time, they're not ready, that's up to them. You can only share information. We will say, for you specifically, be very conscious of your boundaries, because there's a lot more energy going out than what you're allowing yourself to receive right now. And when you feel like you're constantly sharing and sometimes oversharing, it's because it's showing you, and you might get some pushback from people on that, then you need to take some time to recharge yourself. If you are in balance, you're not going to get the pushback in the same way. All right? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hello, group. 2-part question here. Since we're talking about the Big Bang, our scientists call it the Big Bang because when they take the telescopes like the Webb telescope and other telescopes of today's invention, and they look deep into space, they see the red shift, which is indications that, things are accelerating faster and further away from time. Now, if we were to take these high technology telescopes back in time, such as the Great Plague or the Dark Ages, where man's evolution was very stunted, what would the group say that these telescopes and sensors would see? Would we still see that red shift?
You're talking about a very small time shift. It's nothing but, it's not even a beat because you're going back such a small amount of time. So we have 2 answers. So one, it's pretty much the same energy, all right? When you go back 1 billion years, then you're going to see something slightly different. Not much, because that's still a very small increment of time. Now, part of what you're able to see and perceive is based on your own filtering system. So who's doing the looking, and how does it serve them to get that information? So as we said at the beginning, this is not an easy question to answer, and the ego doesn't really necessarily like all this because you're looking for things in a tidy little box, and we can't give that to you. So when you are asking for information, how does it serve you to get that answer? We're going to go off on just a bit of a tangent. We'll come back around here. Many of you often say, I want to connect with ETs. I want to connect with stellar beings. How does it change your reality to do that? It absolutely, fundamentally changes it. You all say, I want to see a physical ET. Really? We think many of you would be a heap on the floor if the ET showed up in front of you. It would be a shock to your system because your foundational beliefs, while you think they're pretty clear, it is an absolute game changer. and you cannot put that genie back in the bottle. So where you're asking the question as far as what kind of shift would they see, it would be relatively the same. But also, when you all are ready, your consciousness is ready to open up to that awareness of the greater universe or multiverses, then you can start to see different fluctuations. There are way more frequency ranges than you are able to perceive, even within the range of your visual spectrum. So what we mean by that is that you think it might be red, but there are 100,000 shades of red in there. You might see 3. So remember, we said everything is infinitely expanding and contracting. So as you are perceiving it, you're kind of looking at a gross frequency range. It's not very refined. And so if they were to look at it, they're still really going to see the same thing. So it's not till you shift out of this limited perspective of reality, you move into more of a multidimensional perspective, that you can see the true nature. And at that point, it becomes a moot point because you connect with all of it. So that's why we said you never hear us really talking about this because it is a bit of a moot point.
The reason why I ask is another channeler that I've connected with basically said that the evolution of mankind, the internet and the consciousness awakening of mankind is making this red shift appear as a red shift. It's as we're evolving and learning as humanity is what we're seeing.
Well, as we mentioned, it depends on who's perceiving it. What filters are in place? So as you elevate your level of consciousness, yes, so as the planetary consciousness goes up, you can start to perceive all of these subtle nuances of frequency that you could not perceive before. But if your level of consciousness were to go back 400 years, even 1,200 years, you're still going to see about the same thing because it's based off of your level of consciousness as you're perceiving it. And even as humans, again, in order to even have the conscious awareness to see it or look for it, it's still going to be relatively similar. It's not going to be dramatically different. It's really about consciousness. It's about who's perceiving, who's doing the looking.
Okay. And second part of the question was, a few years ago you were channeling at the Conscious Life Expo, and you shared a rather interesting and awakening perspective to global warming. And I'm curious if the group still shares that same perspective of what they shared back then as to what's really going on with global warming, or as new information come forward.
There are a lot of levels and layers to this. Your entire solar system is going through its own transformation. So all the planets in your solar system are going through changes. But there is also a control factor that is happening on this planet to try to manage some of those changes. And there are different reasons for that. There are different factions who are trying to control and manipulate the frequency shifts. So we don't want to go too far into it, but some of it is happening because you're moving through this particular sector of space, which is dense in photonic energy, light particles. And if you think about your zodiac, as you're moving through all of the different houses, the different signs, it is really your blueprint to make sure that you're getting a well-rounded experience. And it's the same thing as you move through this universal cycle. There are sectors of space in which the consciousness, as it moves through it, will have certain kinds of experiences, and that's just part of the playing field. So that you, again, have a well-rounded experience. And this sector that you're moving through is bringing lots of light, lots of information, and it's helping you to increase your frequency. It's created a container, if you will, a safe space for you all to rapidly rise. And this is in part why Atlantis didn't work. It wasn't time. It was kind of a test run, if you will, for many of you who chose to incarnate during those periods, in order to have the experience of an awakened consciousness and then a descension process, so that when it came to now, you could flip it upside down and have that asleep energy, that lack of awareness, and move into more of an expanded state. It wasn't quite time to go through the ascension process because you didn't have the energetic support of this sector of the universe. So We know we probably sound like we're being a bit evasive to giving you a hard and fast, but there are many, many things. There's weather modification going on your planet without a doubt. There are those who would like to see consciousness suppressed, and it doesn't really matter what those beings want. This is really important. Hear us now. It doesn't matter what anyone else outside of you wants. You control your frequency and your reality. We mentioned this sphere, this giant sphere of time. Every now moment is based upon a frequency. And you can think of it like a circle on the very top, the apex of a triangle. And then within that triangle is another baby triangle. So the now moment is a circle. It's based upon an agreed upon set of circumstances collectively that you say, this is our experience. And then personally, which is the tiny triangle, this is what happened to me in my life. Every single moment that you experience is structured this way. Now, if you think about that larger sphere, you might be way over here on this side of the sphere, and you could shift your awareness. You could start telling yourself a completely different story of reality, and basically that's what you're doing through the ascension process. You're letting go of those limiting beliefs. You're changing the frequency upon which you're standing. You change your perception of things that happened in the past. Oh, I forgive that person. And if you were actually able to go back and watch the entire experience, you would be shocked to find that almost every time it is not anything like what you thought it was. You just plucked out a little story and you deposited that into your foundational belief system. So you can actually move to the other side of the sphere, which has a vastly different frequency upon which you're standing. The reality is based. For many of you, you're not going to do that because that will pull you out of the illusion of the game. But what you will do is choose a reality that is right next to it, a frequency that is very similar, and you'll make small little incremental changes, and you'll move your way around the sphere. But you actually can go from one side to something drastically different, and this is what you call a miracle. This is when you have immediate healing, spontaneous healings. You've shifted the foundation upon which you are building your reality. Sounds fun, doesn't it? 2018 is the year to practice. So it doesn't matter what these darker factions are trying to create. They want you to think that you're powerless, but really you're not. You are holding all the cards. And if you feel disempowered, that is a choice. So empower yourself. What reality do you want to see created? Where do you want your energy to go? You might look at the state of the world and feel very frustrated, very closed down, and we would say, it is time for you to go inside. It's time for you to decide how you want to experience your reality and put your energy into the things that you want to build instead of thinking about the things you want to fight. Because it is literally removing your energy from the fight and putting it elsewhere, and that is what will dissolve the need to have a fight when all of you start pulling out of the illusion that you're engaged with. Does that make sense? Do you all understand? It's very hard because when you are conditioned to think that the only thing worth doing is an active doing state, it's the only thing that has value, that you think that doing anything first within the feminine, making that new selection, is a waste of time. It's hard for you to make that shift. But when you get into that space first, you say, oh, I want to do this. I want to build this. And then you start making easy connections to build it. That's where you are right now as a collective. Yes?
All right. I know there's more questions. I was hoping we could talk weather manipulation, but that'll be in the future. I think there's another question.
Well,
Yeah, there's lots of questions.
let's talk about manipulation for a second, because we do know that this is such a big thing. So it doesn't really matter. People can only manipulate you when you give them your power. Yes? So when you start taking back where your energy is going, when you start checking in, then you're going to find that you are the master of your energy field and you are the master of your reality. As we said, it doesn't matter whether there's chaos going on around you. That doesn't have to be your reality. You can stand in peace in the midst of chaos. So before we take the next question, we want to do an activation for you. So this activation is to help ground you. It is to help empower you. It is to help you have confidence in yourself in the moment. It is to reacquaint yourself with your own divine light. Now, the language of light is a universal language understood by all life. It is comprised of light, sound, sacred geometry, and cosmic information. It is a multidimensional language. So as it is spoken, it is meant to bypass the ego mind. The ego says, well, I want to know what's being said exactly. Doesn't work that way. That's the whole point. Because the ego will take it and twist it. The soul just says, oh yes, I know this, and I'm making my frequency shifts. So it actually helps you to shift the resonance of your field much faster. Now, there are many dialects to the language of light. It's a bit like hearing English spoken in Ireland or the Deep South or in Australia or England. You understand it. It's just got some different tones in there. So there are many versions of the language of light, and all of them you can understand. So there's really nothing for you to know. This is just something that you get to receive. So take a nice deep breath. Take a nice deep breath. There's one more round. So there's a lot of galactic support here. So you'll notice that the frequencies are going to change. The ego mind says, well, I want to know who. No matter, because we are all blending our energy, so it is shifting. And even as we go throughout this conversation together, you're going to notice that the energies may shift slightly here as we go. It's because other beings are blending their energy with our own, so you're getting the frequencies that you need. Because these galactic beings are showing up for you because they have lessons and information that they have worked through, the very same lessons that you are working through now. So as you come into contact with them, you are able to access the how-to from their experiences. It's like somebody giving you a recipe to bake a cake. It makes it much easier than just trying to figure it out on your own. All right, so take another nice deep breath. We've got a little bit more to go through. Indora parabrishkatondo e minueni shkatandua and the katanda takura araberishkate, hisa shkatondo loere berishkate, amboroere minikato on the way, muankata and wershka by the biduine ulua a cola or ebede, hamada berishkato ora abracapta, the bidishkatapatashkatapatashkatapatashkatam, the rapakaptabikata, Iberkadividi, Muam, and Bidikatapatapin, that would the Muam, but the Pitakator, and what Mukata Tokotai. In the Apapicata, the Bishkata, none where about the Bishkata, but every window, but every inqua, but even one, the Kata, the wind, the Kata, the Bishkata. Upper Ipicata, the Buduam, the Kata, in the Takata, and the Duam, in the Ala, where about the Bishkata. Hasashkoto ora, Picata, and where Eminehicata, Hasushkoto ora, and the Ele Lewara, and I, Gore, Berishkata, Hasashkoto on the other day, and Dua, Picata, Hasashkoto ora, Eberishkate. Ima ama amimula la ruara parkapata ndukut and the aloa bapatikata the didi ida the way the baraka the bridge into whatever I katambuti pikatapatiskim takatu and the did to one man in Ikutoy. Hasashuka Take another nice deep breath. All right. So where should we go now?
Hi.
Greetings.
The first part of my question is when I meditate and relax and go into the heart, I feel this super strong involuntary movements. Some come from my belly button and chest, and also in my left arm. Started out when I started meditating, it was just the thumb, and now it's just the whole arm started to have like this really strong involuntary movements. And I would like to understand what's going on energetically
So sometimes when you all have these, you could say spasms, but you have, it's more than that. Yes, you involuntarily want to move. It's the energy channels and you trying to adjust the body so that the energy can run through the body in a better way, in a more efficient way, so that you can say there's a bit of a resistance or a blockage that's been set up. And so that's in part why you're feeling it as you're running more energy, as you're opening up your heart center. It depends, because some of you will experience this when you connect with your guides. Some of you will experience this simply when you're connecting with yourself. If you're connecting with your guides, ask them to adjust the frequency. Even if you are having a challenging time as you're opening up, you can ask your guides to help you to adjust your frequency so that it doesn't have to be, sometimes it can be a little scary. It's not necessarily uncomfortable. It can be, but for most of you, it's just a little scary. The fear comes up for you. So you can ask your guides to help to make a shift in your energetic field so that you can open up the physical pathways, because your physical body is based off of an energetic template. So any change that has to be made or that you'd like to make to the body is an energetic one first, because you can try to do things from the body level first. It's only temporary. So if you want to make a permanent change, it has to be energetic. So the activation that we just did should help with some of that, to help open you up to allow more energy to flow freely through the body. Work with the breath. The more you are breathing, the easier it's going to be, because that is what naturally moves the energy through your body. So if you've got resistance anywhere, the more often you are consciously breathing, and there are lots of different ways to breathe to achieve different results. So, we're not even going to go into that. But just breathe. Just monitor your breath. Just observe it. It doesn't have to be in any particular way. You do that for 2 minutes. Most of you are going to feel like it's an eternity because you're not used to taking that time and moving that much energy. You might find that you get really squirmy, because when you start to move that energy, anything that is of a lower vibrational nature starts to vibrate to come up, and that gets your attention. And for most of you, you don't like it. So, we can't feel that. That's why we stuffed it down. We can't let it out. So just breathe, and that will help you. So we would also say work with the breath. All right?
Okay. And also, how do we empaths become comfortable with the discomfort of others? A little bit to do with what Lee was talking about.
Deal with your own stuff. Simply put. Not to be harsh, but it is the truth of the matter. Because what happens is that as you are expanding outward, as an empath, you read people. You expand your energy out, you hit a field, you read it, it's like sonar, it bounces back. As empaths, what happens, if you haven't cleared your own stuff, you feel it as if it's your own. You resonate with it, and that's when you go into contraction. If you are grounded, if you have been working on letting go of your judgment, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, what happens is you expand your field. You will read someone else's energy and say, oh, that's an interesting thing they've set up for themselves. That's fascinating. Wow. But you're not triggered by it. And this is what empaths have to do. You have to learn to ground, to hold your own resonance, and then you have to start working more and more with your own stuff. So as we were saying before, if you're finding that you're getting triggered by somebody else's mood, then you've got to deal with your own stuff. It could be the suppression of that very same energy, or it could be the overexpression of that energy. So it's really, as we said, there are only 2 things to do: ground and be present. And that goes for being empathic. If you're doing that, then it becomes much easier. To know that you are not a victim to somebody else's moods as an empath is also very important for you to know, because as empaths, you have a learned behavior that is not great, that you feel victimized by the world. So you've got to take back your power. You've got to stand in it, and when you stand in your power, the way you do that is by letting go of judgment, by standing in a place of seeing that everything is a valid vibrational exploration. It's not right, it's not wrong, it just is. The minute you set up a judgment, you create separation from source. You cut off your energy flow. Remember, this is a polarized universe. You've got positive and negative. So the moment that you want to make something separate from you, oh, I don't like that, that's bad behavior. No, it's a vibrational exploration, and it's a valid choice. But what happens is you want to distance yourself from half of source energy. How's that work for most of you? Not well. So just be mindful of that. Just acknowledge it. It doesn't mean it's a frequency that you have to embody. So, and frankly, if you looked at some of the naughty behavior that's going on this planet and you really looked at it, you'd say, thank you for teaching me that I don't have to walk that path, because that's a really uncomfortable path, but I can learn from your experience. Thank you. When you have gratitude in that way to see how that serves you, that's what frees you, because you're able to see it from a neutral standpoint. Ego mind polarizes. Source is the totality of that polarization. All right, and that's really important for you all. It's really quite simple. Let go of judgment. And even the light likes to do this, to say, the negative is wrong. It's going to keep you in the polarity game. It's going to keep you in the struggle. Don't make the dark wrong. Make it a valid choice, just one that you don't want to make. Make sense? And there is a difference between not wanting to make it because it isn't exciting for you. Many of you don't want to make it because you are judging it. It's a tricky thing. Many of you say you want things, but the reason you want them is to avoid the negative. So money is an easy one for you all to see. You want money because you don't want to be poor and the struggles that come with it. When you approach it from that way, guess what? You are plugging into the negative because you want to create that separation. When you approach it from a state of curiosity and excitement about, I wonder what this would be like, it creates a very different reality for yourselves. It's subtle, but this is why we keep sending you back to working with frequency rather than form, because the frequency will determine the form. Your part in the manifestation process is to work with frequency. The universe creates the form because you couldn't even begin to see the vastness from where you are standing of what is possible. But you can work with the frequency. And you have been given genetic material from thousands of worlds, which means your emotional range here is vast. And no other planet in the entire universe has the emotional range that you have. None. We say if you want to go learn about emotions, go to Earth. It's a blessing and a curse, because you can get trapped into the negative, you can get trapped into the struggle, or you can find many ways out because you've got lots of options and building blocks upon which you can build your reality. So we know that our time is nearing here, and we want to thank you all for your questions, for your support, for your curiosity. In parting, we would say this. It is really important that you go inside and start asking questions. If you say to your guides, what do I need to know? They say, well, where do we begin? True wisdom and knowledge has to be sought. It cannot be given. When you have a question, then the world opens up and we can give you all kinds of information. But you've got to go inside and ask first. So we want to fire up your creativity. We want to fire up your curiosity, because that's when the answers will start to come. So do some inner questioning as you start 2018. It's always a time of review for you all. So really think about, what do I want to know more about? What do I want to explore? It's an adventure. Put your hands up. Go for the ride. All right? So know that there is a tremendous amount of support for you on the other side. We are ever present with you. For us, it's just the next moment. So you don't need Wendy. Get yourself quiet, ground, heart center yourself. Think of something that makes you smile or heart center you. Ask your question and listen, and we will do our best to give you an answer. So until we hear from you directly, we are around, we are watching, we are waiting, and we are sending many, many well wishes. So again, I want to thank you all. It is such a pleasure and an honor for me to be here and to be able to do this. I couldn't do it without you. And I'm always amazed at the wonderful questions that people have. I learned so much from you, so thank you for teaching me. And if you want to know more about the language of light or the galactic light codes, which are the symbols that represent it, you can find all of that on my website at higherfrequencies.net. And I think there are some business cards out front. So again, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the evening.